Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.
WisconsinEye campaign coverage. We're at the Milwaukee Public Library. Linda Boucher of Brookfield is a Republican running in the 14th Assembly District. Linda, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you.
What do you consider the top issue in your race?
The top issue and the reason for which I'm running
Yes.
is because they closed the juvenile justice facility at Lincoln. And I feel very passionately about the youth. I taught special education for 30 years and I'm familiar with that population. And I think I can envision not just building a building, but I envision a program. And the program would include more thorough mental health assistance. And we would also consider increasing the aids and the services for AODA treatment and have intensive care there. Mandatory, I think it would be nice to have mandatory parental and or guardianship or mentorship involvement in the probationary process. And we should do for the juveniles what we're doing in every other system. We should get businesses involved in the transition and the training of hope and a future of some type of job, employment situation.
So was it a wise decision to vote to close the youth prison?
I think it was okay to do that because now we can start from scratch and have a program as opposed to just a facility. And as we look to relocate, I think maybe we should consider relocating near technical colleges.
Okay. Part of the debate in the next budget is whether we need a state prison for adults with the prison in Green Bay and Waupun built in the 1800s. Do you think we need a new state prison for adults?
I think that that's a broad statement when you're clumping all of the adults in one bag. Yeah. For example, drunk drivers. Alcoholism is a disease, and I see it as another category where we can provide more intensive treatment as opposed to lockup. So I think we would need to look at what is happening in other states and the positive and negatives regarding, is it better to have bigger or is it better to have smaller and more intensive, treatment?
Okay. Let's talk about state aid for public schools. There's an increase in the current 2-year budget in state aid for public schools. Do you think it's enough, or do you think there should be another major increase in the next budget?
Well, I do support the $200 increase per pupil on the reimbursement rate.
Yes.
I also support the AP and youth option programs to merge into early college credit. And I think we can continue increasing the aids and the grants for student mental health programs for bullying and categorical aids. I also support funding to increase special ed categorical aids to a 90% reimbursement. I think that anything that is put into education is never lost. It's only a gain for us now as we delve into it and the future. This is our future. We need to put as much into education and do the best job possible that we can.
The Choice Voucher Program has grown from Milwaukee to Racine to statewide. Do you support it?
I support the voucher system. However, I think it needs a little tweaking. And I'm referring to the point at which the funding is the same for voucher school children as it is for the public schools. I see a problem or a question mark is, are they accepting and servicing the needs of special ed population? And I think that if the funding is going to go to the school, they also should be expected to have special ed teachers, psychologists, social workers, and if not, then there needs to be just a tweaking in the amount of funding that goes for it, because the public schools are picking up that portion of the financial burden for staffing and all those needs that are not necessarily being serviced in voucher schools. And I do speak from experience. I know firsthand a family member who was kicked out of a voucher school because they couldn't meet their needs. And there were 16 in a classroom, and the little child who was in kindergarten said to the mom after they got, hero of the week, and they were told, the mom was told, we can't service your kid, you have to find another school. And the kid went in the car and said, Mom, I'm a failure. Why was everybody else's poster put on the wall and mine is now with me and I can't go back to that school? So I'm speaking from firsthand experience, knowing that the needs of special ed kids are not being met in every single voucher school in all situations.
The $4 billion in tax breaks and tax incentives for Foxconn in Mount Pleasant, do you support those incentives, those tax breaks?
I think Foxconn is an issue that was already decided upon.
Okay.
And I think we should watch and see how it plays out. I wasn't involved in the process, so I can't speak either way, and I'm not a person who speculates.
Okay.
Let's see how it plays out.
Your position on legalizing either recreational or medical marijuana, please?
Well, I'm in favor of the medical marijuana, and I do think it should be, controlled by prescription. As far as recreational marijuana, I think we really need to take a good look before we make any quick, fast decisions, because there's so many pros and so many cons and so many opinions out there, but we also need to take a good look at how is this going to affect the mental health of our population that is involved in it. Is it going to affect addictive behaviors? How is it going to affect the crime rate? And what is going to happen to healthcare costs as a result if it would go through and it would be passed? And not just healthcare with the effects of it, but how about businesses? Are they going to demand and need more regular testing for their employees and employers? Then how's that going to affect the entire employment?
The impasse in the Capitol over how to pay for highways and bridges. How would you pay for future highways and bridges and maintenance?
I think that, first of all, I would not support any gas tax increase.
Okay.
I think we already have a high taxing on
What about the
gasoline.
$75 you and I pay to register our vehicles?
That's what we pay, but I do think that there are other solutions also.
Yeah.
Everyone uses the highways, whether they're a driver or not a driver, because they have some type of transport system, whether it's bus or subway or. I think that many of the people who are doing shopping online, for an incentive, they're getting no shipping fee through many of the corporations. And I was thinking, well, maybe we should just have a mandatory small fee. Just like you have a user fee when you get tickets to the theater, it's like handling and da-da. We could just say a shipping fee, flat rate, $1. That's all. And have that go into a road repair, revenue, bridges, highway funding. I think that could be considered. Or Walker just made an announcement that he was going to implement taxing of online goods.
Yeah, in the wake of that Supreme Court decision, South Dakota versus Wayfair. Yeah, he's going to move to try to recover the sales tax from online vendors, yes.
So if we recover some of that sales tax, if we don't do this $1 flat fee or whatever they would agree upon for instead of free shipping, maybe we could take a little portion of that revenue and set it aside specifically for the infrastructure.
Local governments have been living with levy limits since 2006. Some local government leaders say levy limits hurt their ability to provide local services. Is it time to loosen or get rid of levy limits?
Well, our tax levy increased in Brookfield to 3.13%, but that was due to an increase in enrollment and a decrease of overall aid. And the tax levy figure doesn't reflect that I just quoted, it doesn't reflect all of Wauwatosa, the small section of Milwaukee that's in the 14th Assembly District. I can't say anything further on that.
Okay. The UW system, we're in the 6th year of a freeze on resident undergraduate tuition. Should that freeze be continued to a 7th and 8th year?
I think the whole UW system should be looked at because I'm not really sure of how it is being affected with people being able to have online courses. I don't know if that is demanding more or less faculty. In addition to some of the high schools that are offering dual credit for university classes. So I would need to know a little bit more data as to the funding, where it would go, where it wouldn't go. How do my constituents feel about that? How does the rest of Wisconsin feel about that? I know how the university system feels about that, but we need to evaluate where can our money best be fiscally spent to get the biggest bang for our buck. And we have to prioritize. Is it the roads? Is it elementary education, the voucher system? That's a discussion that needs to be, taken place, and I would like to hear a lot more about it before I could make any type of decision in reference to my constituents and how they feel about that issue.
2 questions on healthcare. Does state government have a role in retaining or recruiting physicians, nurses, and other healthcare professionals?
Does the state have a role?
Yeah, does state government have a role?
Well, they do with Badger Care, and I think that was one of the greatest things that Governor Walker did, was maintain Badger Care for this state. And I hope he would also continue to fund the Medicaid and Medicare at the rate at which he is. There's only one thing to be considered also that's not being addressed and evaluated, is we need to look at, are we doing the best for our veterans? Are we now, since we heard a couple months ago, are we doing better? Are we giving them expedient care, and are we giving them care that is not involving a lot of paperwork? And are we offering them to see the physicians of their choice in certain cases? So I think we need that. That's a discussion that needs to be taken place.
Rural healthcare, unique issues with, you have an older demographic, and you have young people leaving, and you have less household income than the statewide average. Thoughts on continuing and improving healthcare in the rural areas? Any thoughts come to mind?
Yes, I think we do need to address the rural areas. They should not be left alone. It's not in my district, but I think that they should get excellent health care just like anyone else. And I don't know, the old doctors, maybe we need to have mobile type of health care. I know we could have grants and incentives like they do in other states for physicians to relocate in lower areas. And I definitely would support that. Someone shouldn't be left out of the loop just because they choose to live in an area that is not close to medical facilities.
And a final question, the primary, it's a rather crowded primary, August 14th. Differences between you and your opponents?
I think my greatest asset and my difference between my opponents is that I do have a big passion for the youth and the juvenile justice system. Having worked with it, I also am not just a one-dimensional person. I have had many work experiences during my lifetime. I was a special education teacher for 30 years. I co-owned and managed a small business with my husband. I worked at UPS loading trucks. I was a cashier at Kohl's when it was a grocery store in Brookfield. I worked my way through college by packing pickles at Green Bay Food, Dean Corporation now, and Green Bay Canning. I was an account executive, which means I sold Yellow Page advertising, and I also sold for a realty magazine. And my first job was a car hop at A&W, so I really feel connected to the workforce, the business force, the labor force. I'm also a member of Golden Key, I have a lifetime license for a director of special ed and a principal license, and I'm licensed K-12 special ed and 1 through 8 regular ed, which does justify my passion and my concern for the youth of today. And I think that by taking care of our youth, we can nip in the bud a little bit of the mental health problems. We can take care of the crime rate, because along with caring for our youth and providing the right mental health services and concerns, our safety issues will also be addressed. So I thank you for your support and your time.
Thank you. Linda Boucher of Brookfield is the Republican candidate in the 14th Assembly District. The primary is August 14th. Linda, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.